If you're a woman, the odds say you'll likely outlive most of the men around you. If you're a man, the odds are quietly working against you right now, not through some sudden crisis, just cell by cell, year by year. 4 out of every 5 people who live to see their 100th birthday are women. Biology loves calling women the weaker sex. But if that's true, why does the math keep favoring them, decade after decade? Here's the twist nobody ever tells you. For roughly 200,000 years before the 20th century, the answer to that question would have been the exact opposite. It was women who died first. You didn't choose which queue you're standing in today. Neither did anyone in your family before you. But by the end of this video, you'll know exactly why you're standing where you are. Picture death as something that keeps a queue. Not a metaphor for money, not a bill, just a simple, brutal line. And whoever stands at the front is whoever gets taken first. For almost your entire history as a species, one group stood at the front of that line, generation after generation, without exception. And then, within about 200 years, the queue reversed completely. Tonight, you're going to find out how that happened, and why the switch never actually made things fair. It just moved the danger to a different door. For most of human history, the front of the queue belonged to her, and the first reason was childbirth itself. Imagine you're her, giving birth 30,000 years ago, with no one to help but your own hands and whatever the women around you happen to know. There's no antiseptic within reach. No safe way to manage a breech birth. No way to save her if something goes seriously wrong. Every single pregnancy you go through is a wager with death, placed again and again, for as long as your body is able to keep playing. Researchers studying skeletal remains from the Neolithic through the Middle Ages have consistently found that women in their 20s and 30s died at higher rates than men the same age, and the leading explanation researchers keep landing on is maternal mortality. Not a rare tragedy you might hear about once, a leading cause of death for half the adult population you'd have known, generation after generation after generation. And if you were her, this wasn't a risk you took once and walked away from. You faced it again and again for as many years as your body allowed, with no way to opt out. The second reason she stayed at the front of the queue. What scientists who study ancient bones call reproductive depletion, meaning a body worn down faster by repeated pregnancies and years of breastfeeding, with almost no time to recover in between. Look at her joints, her teeth, by the time she's 40. Studies of skeletal populations spanning the Mesolithic through the Middle Ages have documented a distinct pattern in women aged 35 to 45. Joint disease and dental deterioration consistent with the physical toll of pregnancy after pregnancy, breastfeeding after breastfeeding, almost no recovery window in between. If you were born female into that world, your body wasn't risking death once. It was accumulating damage with every single pregnancy, for decades, with no way to step out of line, and no choice in whether you kept moving forward in it. The third reason has nothing to do with biology, and everything to do with the world you'd have been born into: unequal access to food and care. In many pre-modern agricultural societies, when resources ran short, they didn't run short evenly. Sons ate first, sons were nursed back to health first. If you were a daughter, you learned early that your survival came second, quietly, without anyone ever saying it out loud. The evidence for this shows up starkly in the archaeological record. In England, from the Neolithic period all the way through the medieval era, researchers have found evidence suggesting men actually outlived women, a complete reversal of what you'd probably assume is natural today. If you'd been born a daughter in that world, you wouldn't have needed anyone to explain the hierarchy to you. You would have simply lived it, every single day, without ever hearing it said out loud. 3 reasons, all keeping her at the front of the same line. For most of your species' history, being born as her meant standing closest to the door, not because her body was weaker, but because her body was asked to do something extraordinarily dangerous, over and over, in a world with no safety net underneath her. Then, something happened that had never happened before in your species' history. The line actually moved. Somewhere in the 18 and 1900s, modern medicine arrived. Antiseptics, safe blood transfusion, prenatal care, antibiotics that could stop an infected birth from becoming a death sentence. And almost overnight, on the evolutionary timescale, she stepped back from the front of the queue for the first time in human history. In Sweden, one of the best documented populations in demographic history, women went from a life expectancy of about 40 years in 1800 to over 83 years by 2016. The single biggest killer of women throughout your species' history was, largely, defeated within a couple of centuries. But someone still has to stand at the front of the line, and quietly, without anyone announcing it, he stepped into her place. He's at the front of the queue now, and most of the men you know don't even realize it. If you're a man, or if you love one, you're about to see exactly why, one reason at a time. The first reason, a fault written into his own hardware, present before he ever took a single breath. Picture two hard drives sitting side by side. Hers has a backup copy of every file. His doesn't. Women carry two X chromosomes, and if one gene on one X fails, there's a second copy standing by to cover for it. Men carry only one X, paired with a much smaller Y. No backup, no redundancy. If something goes wrong on that single X chromosome, there's no second copy for his body to fall back on. This isn't a bad habit or a lifestyle choice he made. It's baked into the blueprint of every man alive, from the moment of conception, and you cannot opt out of it. The second reason, what researchers sometimes call the risk tax of testosterone. Go back to him, thousands of years ago, out ahead of the group, tracking something dangerous, competing for mates, for status, for a place at the fire tonight. The same hormone that gave his ancestors an edge in physical competition also appears to come with real biological costs, a comparatively weaker immune response, and a reduced ability to metabolize fat efficiently. Sound familiar? It's the exact same pattern this series keeps uncovering. The trait that grants you the advantage is often the same one that quietly moves you closer to the front of the line. You cannot separate the competitive edge from the vulnerability. They may be two sides of the exact same coin, engineered by the same piece of biology, carried forward into every man alive today. Whether you realize it or not, if you're a man, you inherited this exact trade-off, bundled into the same body you're living in right now. The third reason is the most brutal, because so much of it is, technically, voluntary, modern male behavior under pressure. If you're a man, ask yourself honestly, when was the last time you saw a doctor before something actually hurt enough to make you? Higher rates of smoking, higher rates of heavy drinking, far higher rates of premature death from violence, accidents, and mental health struggles that too often go unnoticed until it's too late. Nature didn't push him to the front this time. Choice did, and so did a culture that keeps telling him the provider doesn't get to ask for help. There's no clearer proof of this than what happened in Russia in the 1990s. When the Soviet Union collapsed, the resulting economic shock and a documented surge in heavy drinking hit men dramatically harder than women. By 1994, the gap between male and female life expectancy in Russia peaked at 13. 6 years, one of the widest gender gaps in life expectancy ever recorded anywhere on Earth. Male life expectancy collapsed from 63.8 years down to just 57.6 in only 4 years. Nature didn't put him at the front of that line. A collapsing society did, and he paid for it, quite literally, with his life. 3 reasons he's at the front now: fragile hardware he never chose, a hormone with a hidden cost, and a culture that rewards risk right up until it kills him. Different line than hers. Different reasons. Same brutal position at the front. Whether you notice it or not, it's happening in your family, to men you love. But before you decide he's simply gotten the worst deal, wait. There's a twist nobody mentions, and it's the part that actually changes how you should think about this whole story. Standing further back in the queue isn't the same as walking away untouched. He is more likely to die suddenly, a heart attack, a stroke, a fast and often merciless exit, gone before he even understood he was sick. She, on average, spends those extra years navigating something researchers call the morbidity-mortality paradox, which simply means living longer doesn't always mean living easier. Remember that backup hard drive from earlier? The second X chromosome that protects him? No, wait, that protects her, the one his body doesn't have? Here's the twist. That backup copy isn't always fully switched off. In a lot of women, some of the genes on that second X chromosome stay quietly active instead of shutting down the way they're supposed to, and several of those genes happen to control the immune system. Combine that with estrogen, which actively boosts antibody production, while testosterone does the opposite and suppresses it, and you get an immune system that runs hotter all the time. It's part of why she survives infections that might have killed him. It's also, researchers increasingly believe, Why her immune system is more likely to eventually turn on her own body. Higher documented rates of autoimmune disease, where the immune system mistakes healthy tissue for a threat and attacks it directly. Higher rates of osteoporosis, bones that grow thin and break more easily with age. More years, on average, spent managing disability before the end finally comes for her too. The exact same backup system that gave her the edge for most of her life is the one quietly working against her later in it. Researchers sometimes summarize the whole thing bluntly. Men die faster, women get sicker for longer. If you're a woman watching this, statistics say you're more likely to spend your final decade managing at least one chronic condition, your body slowly wearing down rather than simply stopping. If you're a man, you're more likely to never see it coming at all, to feel fine right up until the moment you don't. Neither one of you gets to skip the line entirely. You're just standing in two different queues, being worn down by two different things. Two queues. Two genders. Two completely different centuries deciding who stands where. For most of your species history, women stood at the front, cut down by an act. Childbirth, that nature demanded but offered almost no protection for. Then medicine moved her back, and someone had to take her place. Now it's men standing there, carrying fragile chromosomes they never asked for. A hormone that once helped their ancestors compete and now helps take them early, and a culture that still, in most corners of the world you live in, tells them risk is strength and asking for help is weakness. So no, there is no weaker sex. There never was, and there never will be. There's just one queue, constantly reshuffled by the merciless math of evolution and rewritten, again and again, by whichever century you happen to be born into. You didn't choose your place in it. Neither did she. Neither did he. You just inherited it, the way every generation before you did, quietly, automatically, one lifetime at a time. And here's the part that should actually unsettle you. The queue is still moving right now, tonight. Somewhere in the world, a woman is dying in childbirth from a complication medicine solved a century ago, simply because she was born on the wrong side of a border, still standing where she should have been moved back from long ago. And somewhere else, a man is skipping the checkup that could save his life because he was raised to believe that noticing pain in his own body was a kind of weakness. You may have inherited a safer spot in the line. Not everyone did. Not everyone still does. So here's the real question. Not who has it worse, because you've just seen that's the wrong way to keep score. The real question is this: which line are you standing in right now, and do you even know it? Tell me in the comments.